Thanks to the Boombox 3's new speaker setup, the Boombox 3 now has an impressive amount of bass and it no longer sounds flat and nasally at higher volumes, like its predecessors did. Now overall, I like and recommend the Boombox 3, but today we're going to see how the Boombox 3 stacks up to my personal favorite Bluetooth speaker, the UE Hyperboom. And we're also going to see how it compares to the feature-packed Sony XG500. Can the Boombox 3 finally dethrone the Hyperboom? Regarding pricing, there have been some changes here over the last couple of months. Currently, the Hyperboom has a retail price of $450, a $50 price increase from when it first came out. The XG500 currently has a retail price of $500, a $50 price increase from when it first came out, but it's currently on sale for $400, making you feel like you're saving $100. And finally, there's the Boombox 3, which has a retail price of $500. Nonetheless, if you want to pick any of these speakers up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch shelf down below. I've made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And if you've been watching me for a while, you know I can be very particular. So I'll only set my name on something that I'm really proud of. Now first, let's talk about the design of these speakers. Now all of these speakers are meant to be large enough to bring big sound, but still easy enough and durable enough to take them on the go with you. All of these speakers have fabric wrap bodies, which are going to have no problem standing up to constant abuse from bumps and scrapes. All of these speakers have built-in carrying handles on them, making them easy to carry around. They're all relatively lightweight, all weighing in less than 15 pounds. And all of these speakers aren't afraid of a little bit of water because they're all water resistant. But personally, the Hyperboom is my preferred looking speaker here and my preferred speaker to travel with here because of its rectangular design. Personally, I really like that the speaker takes up the least amount of surface area if placed on the floor or table. The Hyperboom's simple design also allows it to simply disappear when not in use. But also, with its rectangular design, the Hyperboom isn't going to roll all around in your trunk if you've got it in your car while you're driving. Whereas with these other two speakers, you gotta secure them down somehow. These are just some simple observations that I've made after using the Hyperboom for the last 3 years or so. However, something that the XG500 does have over these other two speakers is that it has a built-in light feature. But the thing about this light feature is that it's tucked in between the passive radiators and it's not super bright. So personally, I never really use this light feature on the speaker because you can barely even see it. So personally, I just use the XG500 with this light feature turned off, and I enjoy the battery savings. But now let's talk about battery life, because this is an area where the XG500 shines when compared to these other two speakers. Now, the XG500 has an advertised battery life of 30 hours, but that's with the speaker playing a little below 50% volume, with its light feature turned off, but with its mega bass feature turned on, which is good. Whereas with the Hyperboom and Boombox 3, both of these speakers have an advertised battery life of 24 hours, but that's while these speakers are playing at 50% volume. However, real-world use with the XG500 playing at 80% volume, with the light feature turned on, and with this mega bass feature turned on, I'm getting a very healthy 8 to 9 hours of playback time before the battery is fully drained. But the thing about the XG500 is that if you use it with this light feature turned off, you can extend its battery life a little bit. And if you were to use it with its mega bass feature turned off, you can extend its battery life a little bit as well. However, if you were to use the XG500 with its mega bass feature turned off, it is going to sound super flat. And all stamina mode is on this speaker is using it with both its light feature and mega bass feature turned off. Because for comparison's sake, at 80% volume, the Hyperboom is good for about 8.5 hours of playback time, which is also very good, and the Boombox 3 is good for about 8 hours of playback time, which is also good. Now overall, both the Hyperboom and Boombox 3 can hang for long use sessions, but the XG500 is hitting 8 to 9 hours of playback time with all of its features turned on. But if you were to use it with its light feature or mega bass feature turned off, you can extend its battery life a little bit, and you can extend its battery life even more if you were to use it while in stamina mode. However, when it comes to charging these speakers, both the XG500 and Hyperboom have an external power brick that you have to worry about. Whereas with the Boombox 3, there is no longer an external power brick that you have to worry about. You can just plug in any universal double-barrel AC power cable. And personally, I do find this to be an advantage for the Boombox 3, because if you were to take the Boombox 3 to a friend's house and if you had to charge it up, it's very likely that your friend has one of these cables just lying around. Now, since we're on the topic of ports, the Hyperboom is the only speaker here that has an optical port. So if you wanted to, you can always use the Hyperboom as a soundbar with either your TV or gaming console, and this could maybe help you justify this purchase. But then there's the XG500, which is the only speaker here that has a 1/4-inch input, so you can plug in a guitar or a microphone. And this could come in handy either for simply hosting events or for karaoke. And personally, I do find this 1/4-inch input on the XG500 to be more useful than the optical port on the Hyperboom. And I do think that this could be a deciding factor for some people. Now, all of these speakers have USB-A ports so they can plug in your own devices and charge them up. But the XG500 has 2 USB-A ports, and you can also plug in a USB stick and play music off of it. Now, personally, I'm glad that all of these speakers have USB-A ports on them, but personally, I still really wish that all of these speakers had USB-C ports on them that would allow me to charge my own devices and use it as a wired connection, like with the USB-C port that's found on the Extreme 3. And personally, I was really looking forward to this on the Boombox 3, but it never happened. But at least all of these speakers still have a 3.5mm audio jack on them, so you can always use them with a wired connection. Now, I know this sounds very basic, but I do have to point it out because all of these manufacturers have already started to remove the audio jack on their smaller speakers. But more importantly, when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, all of these speakers can be connected to 2 devices at the same time so that you and a friend can both be DJ. All of these speakers have 0 latency across the board when watching movies or videos on your phone, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device. But when it comes to audio codecs, both the Boombox 3 and Hyperboom are only using SBC. Whereas the XG500 has support for SBC, AAC, and LDAC, which is Sony's own in-house high-res audio codec. However, if you do want to take advantage of LDAC, you do have to be an Android user. But regardless, whether you're an iPhone or an Android user, SBC is going to work perfectly fine. But now, let's talk about actually listening to music with these speakers. The XG500 has what I feel is the most basic speaker setup here. It has dual frontward firing woofers, dual frontward firing tweeters, and dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides. Pretty standard. Now, the Hyperboom also has dual frontward firing woofers and dual frontward firing tweeters, but its passive radiators shoot out the back. So, with the Hyperboom, you can always amplify its bass by simply placing it up against a wall, because that way, the bass has something to bounce off of. Now, you can achieve the same effect with both the XG500 and Boombox 3, but with these, you gotta place them in a corner. But then, there's the Boombox 3. Now, the Boombox 3 also has dual frontward firing woofers, but its woofers are a little smaller than the woofers found on these other 2 speakers. You've also got dual frontward firing tweeters, but these tweeters are stacked on top of the woofers. Now, don't be alarmed, the Boombox 3 doesn't sound muffled because the tweeters are stacked on top of the woofers, but JBL did this so that they could squeeze in a new frontward firing subwoofer to complement the dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides. But overall, I do feel the Boombox 3 has the most unique speaker setup here. But now, let's jump into the sound test. All of these speakers are playing with their stock EQs. However, the Boombox 3 is playing while at 75% volume, the XG500 is playing at 81% volume, and the Hyperboom is playing at 87% volume.
I got you and your vibes in my mind, I can't get them out, no matter how hard I try. I need you and your heart next to mine, yeah, I'm all about keeping it you and I. When you're here, you spark chemical reactions, your aura strikes like lightning. Got no words, I'm just drowning in attraction. Only one way to describe it, it's electric. I get lost in your eyes every time. There's no turning back. Swear I ain't got a chance. Had me caught up in you since the night on the terrace. Yeah, you had me falling fast. You know, when you're here, you spark chemical reactions. Your aura strikes like lightning. Got no words, I'm just drowning in attraction. Only one way to describe it. It's electric. Can you feel it? You got the only touch that takes me high. It's electric. I'm losing my feelings. I turn my head
So when it comes to sound quality, I feel that we have a spectrum here. The XG500 is the warmest speaker here. The mids and vocals aren't as pronounced as these other two speakers, and at times it can sound a little shallow. Whereas with the Boombox 3, this speaker is the brightest here, and at times the highs on the speaker can sound a little harsh. But the vocals on the Boombox 3 are much more pronounced, and the Boombox 3 has better instrument separation than the XG500. But then there's the Hyperboom, which I feel is the best and most balanced sounding speaker here. Just like the Boombox 3, the Hyperboom has good instrument separation and the vocals are well defined and easy to hear. But unlike the Boombox 3, the highs on the Hyperboom don't get super harsh, and in general, the bright EQ on the Boombox 3 is problematic, but thankfully, the Boombox 3 now has an adjustable EQ, a rather new concept for JBL speakers. And I feel that if you want to get the best sound out of the Boombox 3, you have to go in and raise the bass by 2 clicks and lower the treble by 1 click. Now, the Hyperboom also has an adjustable EQ, but personally, I really feel that the Hyperboom sounds best with this stock EQ. And finally, there's the XG500, which also has an adjustable EQ. And with this speaker, I would go in and raise the mids and treble a little bit, but still, with both the mids and treble being increased, there's still this muffledness to the XG500. Now, when it comes to the overall physicality in the bass of these speakers, one of the main drawbacks about the Boombox 3's predecessors is that they would sound flat and nasally at higher volumes. But that is no longer an issue with the Boombox 3. The Boombox 3 now does a much better job of linearly increasing its bass as you increase its volume. Plus, thanks to the new frontward firing subwoofer, you're really going to feel that bass. And overall, the Boombox 3 has the most amount of physicality in its bass here, finally dethroning the Hyperboom. So overall, if you want the most fun sounding speaker here with the most amount of bass, then you'll want to go with the Boombox 3. But if you want the best sounding speaker, I still maintain that the Hyperboom is the best and most balanced sounding speaker here. However, performance-wise, the Boombox 3 is also the best option here because it gets the loudest here. But part of the reason why the Boombox 3 is able to get so loud is because of its brighter stock EQ. But even if you were to use this speaker with my recommended EQ, it's still going to get louder than these other two speakers. Whereas with the Hyperboom, it does a decent job of keeping up with the Boombox 3. But then there's the XG500, which doesn't seem as loud, but that is partly because of its warmer EQ. However, with both the XG500 and Boombox 3, if you were to use them while they're plugged in, you're going to get a noticeable performance boost out of them. They're going to get a little louder and they're going to have more bass. Whereas with the Hyperboom, you don't get a performance boost while it's plugged in. But with all that being said, I still feel that the Hyperboom has the best sound quality here because it sounds the most balanced. But performance-wise, the Boombox 3 is the winner here because it also has good instrument separation, it has more bass, and it gets louder. The issue here is the Boombox 3's super bright stock EQ, which can make it sound harsh. But thankfully, there's now a customizable EQ. so you can fix that. So for that reason, I do prefer and recommend the Boombox 3 over the Hyperboom, because I feel you're going to get more out of it. And finally, there's the XG500. Now, this speaker sounds fine and it gets the job done, but personally, I'm not a fan of its warmer nature. But finally, let's talk about pairing these speakers up with other speakers. Now, the Hyperboom is using UE's Party Up, so you can pair it up with other Party Up speakers, like either another Hyperboom or to a Boom 3 or to a Mega Boom 3 and to a few of UE's other legacy speakers. And you can have up to 150 speakers paired together, which is obviously just overkill. But then there's the Boombox 3, which is using JBL's Party Boost. Now you can pair your Boombox 3 up to other Party Boost speakers, like either another Boombox 3 or to a Boombox 2, an Extreme 3, a Charge 5, a Pulse 4, a Flip 5, a Flip 6, and you'll also be able to pair it up to the upcoming Pulse 5, and you can pair up to 100 speakers together. And finally, there's the XG500, which is using Sony's Party Connect, and you can pair your XG500 to other Sony Party Connect speakers, like either another XG500 or to an XG300, XE300, XE200, XB43, XB33, or XB23, and you can pair up to 100 speakers together. But the really cool thing about Sony's Party Connect is that you can also pair your smaller XG500 to any of Sony's larger box speakers that are also using Party Connect, like either an XP500 or XP700. Whereas with JBL, you cannot pair any of your smaller Party Boost speakers to any of JBL's larger Party Box speakers. Now, even though Sony's Party Connect is very accommodating and it gets the job done, personally, it is not my favorite speaker pairing protocol out there because it can be a hassle to use. Sometimes it just takes forever for all of your speakers to get paired up. Sometimes all of your speakers don't get paired up, so you're going to have to go through the pairing process multiple times. And sometimes echoes do form. Now, Sony's Party Connect does correct this echo after a while, but it's only a matter of time before that echo comes back. So, even though Sony's Party Connect gets the job done, it can be a hassle sometimes. Whereas Party Up is much easier to use. I never have any issues with this speaker pairing protocol. The problem here is that UE doesn't have that many speakers to choose from, and personally, I don't have high hopes for UE's future speakers. It's been years since UE updated any of these speakers, and UE's newest speaker, the Hyperboom 3, was a bit of a disappointment. It still doesn't have Party Up, and it's still charging via a micro USB port. Personally, I feel that if you plan on getting multiple speakers and if you plan on constantly pairing them together, I do feel JBL's Party Boost is the way to go. JBL's Party Boost is super easy to use, it just works, and there's a healthy ecosystem of speakers to choose from. But with all that being said, if you're trying to choose between any of these speakers, then I do feel the Boombox 3 is going to be the best choice here. From a performance standpoint, the Boombox 3 gets the loudest here, and it has the most amount of bass here. Now yes, the speaker does sound very bright and harsh with its stock EQ, but you can easily fix that with your own EQ. And also, if you plan on getting multiple speakers and constantly pairing them together, then Party Boost is the best option here because it just works and you have a healthy ecosystem of speakers to choose from. Now don't get me wrong, I still think the Hyperboom is the best sounding speaker here because it doesn't get harsh. But personally, I am hesitant about getting the Hyperboom right now because of its age. I don't have high hopes for its successor if the Hyperboom 3 is anything to go off of. And if you plan on getting multiple speakers, your options are a lot more limited here. But finally, there's the XG500. This speaker has the most amount of features here. You can plug in a microphone, you can plug in a guitar, you can plug in a USB stick, you can pair it up to a good amount of portable Bluetooth speakers, and you can pair it up to Sony's box speakers as well. But sound quality wise, the XG500 can sound a little shallow and muffled. But if you can get a good deal on it, you should pick it up, because it still sounds good enough. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.